I'm Rabbi David Fine, and today I'm hosting Rabbi Larry Rothwach, one of the most respected pulpit rabbis in America. He's been the rabbi of Congregation Beth Aaron in Teaneck for over 22 years. During that time, he watched 20% of his community make aliyah. They'd call him from Israel and tell him the same thing. We love it here, but we miss having a shul that's really a community, a rabbi who knows our names, a kehilla that's there for us in moments of joy and crisis. Now he's making aliyah himself to build exactly that, a new community named Meromei Shemesh in Ramat Beit Shemesh. He's also the Director of Professional Rabbinics at RIETS, which means he's been training the next generation of American rabbis in pastoral care and community leadership, work that overlays deeply with what we do at Barkai for Israeli rabbis. Today, we talk about what American communities have that Israeli ones often lack, whether that model can actually take root in Israeli soil, and what it means to start over and build something from nothing at a stage in life when most people are slowing down. Welcome to the Defining Moments podcast. I'm Rabbi David Fine. Here we are at the beautiful Dabru Studios in Modi'in. And today I'm very honored to host a good friend of mine and a colleague who's doing some very important and exciting things, Rabbi Larry Rothwach. Welcome, Rabbi Rothwach.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Fine. It's a pleasure to be here.
So as I was saying before we started recording, that this podcast has been for people who live in Israel for a lot of different reasons, and you don't yet live in Israel, but you will be living in Israel come this summer. So could you tell us, before we start the formal interview, give us a 2-minute rundown on stats, who you are, where you were born, where you live, what you do,
Sure.
Kids, wife.
Wow. Okay. 2 minutes. Okay, here we go. So I was born and raised in, let's just say, the New York metropolitan area. Started in Far Rockaway, then moved to Fair Lawn. For a period of time, I was an assistant rabbi in West Orange, and now I'm in Teaneck. But I think it's important to just recognize, like many people, my entire life I've lived within more or less like a 25-mile radius. I'm now, 52 years old. And as you said, 6 months away from making a pretty significant transition. My wife also grew up in Fair Lawn. She's actually the daughter of Rabbi and Rebbitzin Yudin, who were the founding rabbi and Rebbitzin of the Orthodox community there. I have 5 children, 4 of whom will be living here by the summer. My youngest will be finishing high school this coming year. And about 4 years ago, we made the decision to...
Wait, and you should just say that you're the rabbi of... right, that's
sure.
important, right?
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So I am currently the rabbi of Congregation Beth Aaron in Teaneck, where I've been for 24 years.
Wow.
I also have the good fortune of being working at RIETS, the Smicha program at YU, as the Director of Professional Rabbinics. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and have the opportunity to work with couples and families who are looking for support and guidance in a clinical sense, and we are transitioning. Please God,
right. So you were about to say 4 years ago.
Yeah. So 4 years ago, approximately, we began a very serious conversation that culminated in a decision about half a year later, and ever since we've been sort of counting down or counting up, however you want to look at it, and here we are. We're about 6 months away or so, more or less, from this big exciting move.
So what started that conversation 4 years ago?
Yeah, so, it's interesting. I think like many things, when you look back, there are many ways to explain how things happened, why they happened. I would say that it was more of a chance opportunity than anything else. There was tremendous hashgacha, at least from my perspective, involved in how it came to be. But I do think it's fair to say that my wife and I were, even though we were not looking necessarily for the next opportunity, we were primed and ready, if and when something would come up, to look at it with an open mind and an open heart. And so therefore, when
you say something, you mean moving to Israel.
Moving to Israel, right. We were and remain very happy in our community. I want to be very clear. We'll see what comes up in this conversation. I am not running from anything. I'm not running from America. I'm not running from Teaneck. I'm certainly not running from my shul, from our family. Quite to the contrary. Everything about this is much more aspirational.
Moving to, not from.
Moving to. Right. At the same time, 4 years ago, and maybe even a couple of years earlier, we recognized that we were not necessarily excited about the prospect of sort of continuing to do what we had been doing. The level of engagement in the community, which has brought us tremendous satisfaction, fulfillment, sipuk nefesh over the course of decades. We were reaching a point where we felt that we needed something new, and my children, slowly but surely, and the balance of my grandchildren are all living in this country, and so and notwithstanding all the other reasons why individuals and families and communities would look to make aliyah. So the moment was sort of right, and it's always a question of who says what at the particular time. But there was a series of conversations that started with several individuals, and the plan that is currently in place sort of came to fruition, and here we are.
And what's the plan?
The plan. Okay, so here, the 2-minute version is there is a new project that is currently under construction in Ramat Beit Shemesh called Rothstein Heights. As of several weeks ago, it's actually up and running. The first 7 buildings are completed, and somewhere between, it's not clear to me, 20, 30, maybe even as many as 40 families have actually moved in. I had the opportunity to be there yesterday and give the inaugural shiur. We had a Lav Malka last night. It was very special.
So 7 buildings out of how many?
The ultimate, the project in its totality will consist of 30 buildings. The first shlav, the first stage is now complete. The second stage is underway and probably about 2.5, 3 years away from completion. And the vision over here was, listen, it's a beautiful piece of land. The project itself is actually very beautiful. And we wanted to create simultaneously a tzura, if you will, of a community that will, not necessarily an entire community that will transplant itself. That would be wonderful, but I think rather ambitious. But we did want to sort of pitch a message to the greater North American Jewish community for those who are looking for, and I don't know if you have any interest in discussing this, I'm sure you probably will. For those who are looking for, I'll just use a term for a moment to be defined later, an American-style Anglo community, here's maybe something that you'd be interested in and learn about what it is that we are looking to do. And the concept was sort of to develop the software together with the hardware. And it's really come together very beautifully. Now that we're meeting each other, many of us for the first time, it's really beginning to feel like a community.
So before I do want to speak, that's exactly why I asked you to come in to speak about that. But before I got there, now you're talking about you didn't say one thing about this yet, but what they're talking about is that you're the rabbi, or you're going to be the rabbi of this community. I mean, 30 buildings, how many units is that?
It's a lot, about 1,200.
Right, so there are going to have to be multiple shuls and multiple rabbis, right?
Yes. Yeah, I would hope so.
Right.
I'm so glad that you mentioned that.
Right.
Every time I have spoken about this publicly, which I've lost count as to how many events I've gone to and various webinars and other speaking engagements, I always make the point to say, listen, if you like me, great. Let's hang out together. And if you don't, that's okay as well.
Right.
Because there will be many communities over the course of time, not only because, as the joke goes, you need the shul you daven in, the one that you don't, although that's true as well. But as you pointed out, you just do the numbers. Shlav Aleph is is completely sold. Shlav Bet is almost completely sold out, and they're getting ready to sell the next stage of the project. So I don't personally aspire to be the rabbi of a community of hundreds, if not thousands of people, and I don't imagine there's anybody out there who would want to be part of such a community. The distinction of our particular community is that, if you will, we're sort of the first, to a certain extent, almost like sort of defining at least, the one anchoring community that currently exists. But I imagine it won't take long. And perhaps even before I arrive, there will already be talks of the continued flourishing of the communal infrastructure of this complex, this community. I'll also say there are other projects nearby. And I know people who've moved in there who said they plan to join our community, which is totally up to them. But, where you live is, to a certain extent, going to, determine what community you'll be part of, but lav dafka, as we say in America.
Now, how many people from your own shul in Teaneck have bought there?
It's a very good question. A meaningful number. I don't have a number off the top of my head. Most of the people from my community who have bought are not making aliyah yet. Right. So they're in different stages of planning. Some are a year away, some are 2, some are 5, and some don't know quite when they're doing it. But it was very gratifying to both myself and my wife to see, the number of people who were, willing to commit in such a meaningful way that when they decided to actually go ahead and to in most cases, purchase their first home in Israel, to say, we want to be part of this community. So that was actually very meaningful. There are other people that I've known over the years from other communities and interacted with them, and then many who I have either met over the past couple of years or yet to meet, getting to know each other.
Wonderful. So I want to start the next part of the conversation by saying that even though I may play devil's advocate a little bit, just because of what I do, I want you to know that I think it's 100% a great thing, and I wish you only the best in Hatzlacha, and those 30 buildings should fill up, as soon as possible with as many Jews from outside of Israel as possible. But I do want to talk about this, what you called an Anglo shul, because I spend much of my day, if not all of my day, training Israeli rabbis and their wives. And what we're trying to do at Barkai is to bring the model of an American shul to the Israeli market, right? Not to Beit Shemesh and Modin and Ranana, but to, Dimona and Nahariya and Ramla and Lod and Jerusalem and Tel Aviv also, but many, many different places which have never experienced that. They don't know what it is. They haven't grown up with it, and it's very foreign to them. The shul in most of the Israeli world is a place to daven, maybe go to a shir, and that's about it, right? The rabbi, if there is a rabbi of the shul, basically engages in psak halacha and giving shiurim and giving drashas. Over 90% of the shuls in the Dati Leumi world in Israel don't have any rabbi whatsoever. So the whole notion of a community is very foreign. This is not the place where I want to go and explain why. I have a bunch of theories. I've been studying this and investigating it for 15 years. But you're talking about an Anglo shul for a community that recognizes it, right? And I just start by saying, I live in Modin. I live in one of the Anglo bubbles, and we supposedly have an Anglo shul, And sometimes I wonder whether it's the best thing for both the people who are coming to the shul, even though I go there, and the children, and especially in a place like Ramat Beit Shemesh where, it's known, or I don't know if it's as true as I'm making it out to be, that, there are people that fall through the cracks kids that fall through the cracks because they don't necessarily integrate. Like, do you think that it's, a good thing 100% to have a shul which is, basically totally American, that happens to be in Beit Shemesh and not Teaneck?
Yeah, very good questions.
Right.
Okay, so let me try my best to answer your questions as directly as possible. But let me work backwards. This is not intended to be a shul for Americans only.
Right.
The concept of an American-style shul, and I'm happy to give a little more insight as to what that may mean, is part of the branding of what you can expect in terms of the type of shul this would be. And I'll give some examples right now, and you alluded to it. A shul which will be more than a place that you can come to daven, but a shul that serves as a hub for the social, spiritual, educational, programmatic infrastructure of the community. A shul where people will have opportunities to interact with one another in aspects other than the purely ritual moments. However, it is not intended to be a community that will only look to welcome English-speaking members. In fact, I will tell you that as recently as last night when I spoke for the first time in person in Roslyn Heights, in our new community, Meromei Shemesh, to a crowd of about 75, 80 people, I addressed this specifically because now that people are actually moving in, there are, wonderfully, Baruch Hashem, wouldn't you know it, people who only speak Hebrew.
Wow.
And there was a little bit
Were
of
you surprised by that?
Not at all. But I will say that there was some chatter on the WhatsApp group, where some people were requesting, hey, this is, you may have not heard, but this is an American-style community. When you're posting a message, can you please post it in English? And I took that opportunity to say, listen, folks, this is a wonderful opportunity for us to embrace not only our Israeli neighbors, who, you'll forgive me, have every right to speak Hebrew, right? But this is a wonderful opportunity for us to integrate. And there's no false advertising over here. It's not that, bait and switch. All along, they told us it was American style. That means that, on a communal level, as far as the messaging, you'll forgive me, that will come from the office, we will keep in mind, and this brings me to sort of the second point that I want to make, that you have told us, by virtue of the fact that you've bought into this, that you are looking, right or wrong, and I can hear both sides, that you are looking for what some would call a soft landing, a more comfortable integration. And I've said this publicly many times. If you are looking for a very, very intense, immersive experience where you just, fall right into the Israeli community and culture, and you really, you really want the real thing, Ramat Beit Shemesh is probably not the place
for you.
And I've said this publicly, but right or wrong, agree or disagree, there are many people who say, listen, that's not what we want, or it's not what we want now. Right. And they're looking for these communities anyway. So part of this is, to be completely frank, part of this is marketing. In other words, this is what we are looking to build and create. And if you are interested in this, then you can possibly find your future home here. But
let me just interrupt for a second, because I just want to make sure I understand. I always say when I speak that I had more Israelis in my shul in Kansas City than I do in Modi'in in Israel. Right. So when and everyone always laughs when I said that. When I say that, there's not one person who has not laughed when I said that, and I always tell them it's true. It's not a joke. So I'm asking just so I can understand. These Israelis that were at this meeting, they bought apartments in this complex?
Absolutely.
Okay, great.
Yeah, they did. And I think it's important to note as well, and we're going to get into the weeds over here, and I'm not sure that it's so relevant for any of your listeners, but Rothstein Heights is a project. Rothstein is the name of the company, and they've built this project. As far as they're concerned, even though they did have a certain vision in mind as to who they would like their clientele to be, at the end of the day, they're in the business of selling apartments.
Right.
And they would not and have not made this exclusive to our community. We have given our community a name. We've called it Meromei Shemesh. I have never said Rothstein Heights is going to be an American-style project. Right. We've said Meromei Shemesh, which is the name of our community, our shul, sort of incorporated as a separate entity that will be primarily based in Rothstein Heights. So that's how sort of these two organizations have become sort of wedded one to another. But everyone is welcome. Now, I do believe, and I'm starting to get the sense already, that among these initial Israelis that I've met, some of them are already, pleasantly surprised and curious, and maybe even honestly eager to learn more about what we have to offer for the reasons that you mentioned. Right. Maybe they're already, tasting something that seems a little unfamiliar to them. Wonderful. And I would say that if somebody's moving from Teaneck and they're interested in a community which offers just a place to daven, and otherwise just leave me alone, it's not my place to judge and tell people what to do.
Right. Well, there's a lot of judging going on, and on our side, meaning the Israelis are always judging American Jews and American rabbis, and
but I'm not yet an Israeli. So.
No, but what I'll tell you is that we both know that there are several of these building contractors that have asked or invited in American rabbis. Somebody from your own community in Teaneck is going to be doing the same thing in a few years, and there are others in Jerusalem, and it's a great thing for the rabbi who wants to make aliyah, but some, not I mean, I wonder about it, but some would judge, right, and say that what's all these buildings and all these projects, right, we're not integrating with Israelis, right? So I always say, look, I think it would be great to integrate with Israelis. I think it's important, but it's not like a mitzvah d'oraisa to integrate with Israelis. It's a mitzvah to make aliyah, right? And people are here, and they're doing it. So what does it matter whether they're doing it here, there, or everywhere? People have to do it in a way that's most comfortable for them. So I don't like to judge, even though there's a lot of judging going around, but I do wonder whether it's the best idea for everybody.
Yeah. I agree. And like I said before, I can't speak for any other communities and projects. This was never intended to be at all, a community that would be welcoming only towards people who speak English. Not at all. What we were trying to do and continue to try to do is sort of signal to people who are already somewhat apprehensive, even if they're very excited, but about all of the adjustment that's going to be necessary, to let them know that we are going to try to make them. Listen, I'll tell you, my shul, we've seen a very, very significant percentage of our shul make aliyah over the past 25 years. I mean, I've seen, it's probably close to 20%. I say that without exaggeration. And all of them, without exception, have reported back at different stages along the way, a year later, 10 years later, 20 years later, it was the best decision they ever made. No regrets. They love it. And they've
making aliyah.
Right. They've gone to different communities. But they all say, but we miss the shul. We miss the community. Some, probably being overly generous, will say, Rabbi, we miss you, or your wife. I don't know if they really do or not, but I know what they mean, that there is something that they feel that they have lost. And I say this without comment. I say this truly without judgment. But what they are saying is we have no regrets. We would do it again. But we wish that as recently as a couple of weeks ago, there was a member of our shul who made aliyah several years ago. I don't want to say which community she lives in, but you may be surprised. She came back for a few weeks, she was in Teaneck, and she said, "You would not believe how much I miss this." I'm like, "What? Is there something going on this Shabbos today?" So the whole experience of sort of, now again, you'll say she's a little homesick. That's where she was for many years, and I'm sure there's some truth to that. But no, she was insisting that there is something here. And yeah, we're not going to go there right now to talk about why that is and how we got here. But so what we are looking to do is just to create that sort of environment, but it would be wonderful lichatchila for Israelis to join. And I just want to say one other thing.
I want to ask you a question first.
Ahead.
Are you going to be speaking in Hebrew or in English?
That's a very good question. So,
how's your Hebrew?
You want to try it out right now? We can see how far we can go. Unlike yourself, I think you told me at one point you did an Alpan when you came. I have not yet, so I know that you are fluent in Hebrew. And
I went to Flatbush, and I spoke very good Hebrew before I ever came to Israel. And then when I was learning in Smicha, I learned here. So I spent 5 years here. And then the Ulpan that I did take was a one-on-one Ulpan for a week. It was very intensive on the highest level, beyond, so that.
Well, I didn't go to Flatbush.
Right.
Ani lamadati MTA.
Hebrew's not as great there, right?
And I said that without comment. אם אני צריך לדבר עם מישהו, אני יכול לדבר ככה, אחר כמה מילים אני צריך לסיים.
Right, but there are a lot of people who don't understand Hebrew who listen to this podcast.
Okay, so watch. So let me say like this. So this was one of the first questions that I was asked that I was really not prepared to answer. And there weren't many, but there were some questions where
questions when they interviewed you, or
no, not the interview process, but once we went public, and once we started going and taking the show on the road, and people would say, "Oh, so tell me about this." So one of the questions people asked from the very beginning is, because this is almost, when you think about it, it's a way to really test who you are.
Right.
What language are you going to speak in when you give a drasha, a shir? And I didn't know the right answer. What I mean by that is not what do you want to hear from me right now, but what is the right answer to that question? Because as you said before, hey. Forget the fact that it's Lashon HaKodesh, right? We're not talking about speaking Chinese, but we are moving to another country. And who are we ultimately serving if we, continue to do things the way we've always done it? And not to mention the fact that that would almost by definition create a community that may feel exclusive. So early on, I made the decision to give the following answer to that question, and I haven't really shifted. And that is that I expect that initially I would even say all, actually, of the public shiurim drashot will be in English. And, not however, I would like to, additionally, offer, whether it is at the same moment, and I've seen versions of this, and in some cases it's the reverse, it's Hebrew followed by an English sikum, to be able to summarize in Hebrew. I tell you, I gave a shiur yesterday, and there were several Israelis who attended the shiur, and they were completely present and following. In my conversations with them afterwards, they were really struggling to speak a word of English. But as I gave a shiur, they were, and I can appreciate that. I know that there are many members of my shul who say, I can't speak Hebrew, but when a visiting rabbi from Israel comes in, not all of them, but those who know how to speak, we sometimes say, Ivrit Kala, and can slow down the cadence of their voice a little bit, it's much more accessible than people think. And I would like to maybe dispel a little bit of the anxiety that people have around this. I want to say something else, and this is just to be honest. One of the, I would say maybe my greatest skill in this world, and I don't have many, is my ability to communicate thoughts in a way that resonates with people. Not everyone, and not every thought, but I have been able to, with the help of Hashem, to package messages and to deliver them to different audiences with nuance, with perspective. And I don't take that for granted. I recognize, and maybe you'll tell me if I take a very intense Ulpan for 2-3 months, this won't be the case. But I recognize that if I lean in too much to speaking Hebrew initially, I will struggle, not so much personally, but I'm wondering if I will lose more than I gain. And so therefore, I want to try to go into this entire experience in a way in which the ultimate goal is not only for myself, but for everybody as well, to be as inclusive as possible. But I don't want to compromise, really, the one thing that I think I do
your
well.
Your ability to speak, right? I speak in Hebrew. My Hebrew is not the greatest, but it's pretty good. Right. You can never speak in Hebrew and express yourself the way that you can in your native language. It's just impossible.
Right.
So I hear you.
Right. And the goal doesn't have to be necessarily to be as good, but in other words, to be able to come to a place where I really feel that I can, without having to struggle too much, because I see what goes on internally as I'm trying to prepare my thoughts and to share them. There's a lot of processing behind the scenes that goes on, and to be distracted by having to drain the system by trying to find words. So again, I'm the answer is English with Hebrew,
Right.
and the rest yet to be seen.
So I'm going to change the subject and then we'll go back. I want to pick up on something you said. You said that your skill is that you're able to communicate in a sophisticated way. That's my language, not necessarily what you said. So I know because I was a guest in your shul and I spoke in your shul last year. And thank you. You really arranged my whole trip to Teaneck that time. I spoke in a number of different shuls. So I saw on the leaflet that they give at Alon Shabbat, I don't know what they call it, a flyer, whatever they call it in America now, that you have this program called Talking in Shul, right? Uh-huh. It's not the talking in shul like when people talk to each other. It's a program, right? So you like to speak about important issues that other people may sweep them under the rug, it seems to me, right? You talk a lot about mental health. I was telling you before we started that I heard a podcast on 1840 about your daughter and her eating disorder, right? You want to get things out there, right? So that's laudable. What makes you different than so many other people? Right?
I don't know that I'm different than anybody else. Talking in Shul,
right.
Interestingly, which is a program that I'm very proud of, was actually designed to allow other people to speak. Uh-huh. And that's why I'm really proud, not only the program, but the name. We, Baruch Hashem, have a shul, which, there's very little talking, relatively speaking, during shul. But there were many issues over time that I really wanted not only to speak about, but more so that I wanted them to be spoken about. It's not so much that I had something to say. And in fact, one of the most difficult, challenging parts of this program for me is that I really, really try to say less, even though, like everybody else, I have an opinion. And I try to moderate conversations where people in the shul can speak to one another about topics that are relevant, contemporary topics, and in some cases, like you said, topics that are not, they're either controversial or things that we don't talk about at all or we don't talk about enough, including mental health issues and other, social issues and issues that affect the community. And I have found it to be a very successful program. It's been very healthy for people, not only to talk, but more importantly, to listen. Many times people have walked out of those conversations saying, I understand that things are more complex than I assumed beforehand. And, to me, that's a win.
And do you think in a society like Israel, where things are more closed and not as open, that's the same thing, and not as progressive with a small p, not a big p,
closed
right?
And not open.
Right? Do you think that that will be problematic for you in your relationship with other rabbanim in Ramat Beit Shemesh, the Rabbanut, some of your congregants, or do you still feel like you'll be able to get those issues out on the table no matter what?
It's a very good question. I don't know how I will be received and how other rabbis in the area will know what I have to say, care about what I have to say, agree or disagree. I'm comfortable and confident in my role in speaking to audiences that want to hear what I have to say. I like to think that I can speak about issues that others would avoid, but I speak about it in a way in which what needs to be said is said, but I'm also careful not to cross lines that I don't need to, just to go ahead and to aggravate and to offend. You can never really control how other people will react and respond to things you have to say. I'm not so concerned about that. I also want to say that I intend to continue to speak to my American audience. I'll even say my global audience. I don't know if there's anybody in the world who listens to me, but in other words, with today, listen, right now we're speaking to two microphones with the understanding that there will be people in many other countries that may be listening to this, or at least can if they choose. So, the fact that I may be living in a particular city doesn't limit me to that office, and I care very, very much about the community which I have served, which I have lived in. The American Orthodox community in general is one that I want to continue to not only feel part of, but really contribute to actively going forward. So I hope I can make friends with my neighbors, but if not, okay, then I'll speak to a microphone.
There are so many different topics I want to still cover, and
no problem.
We're running out of time. But one of the things I want to talk about is aliyah. Aliyah from the North American Jewish community. You are at the epicenter, in Teaneck of the, what many would call the modern Orthodox community in America. I read an interview you did with Mizrahi. I guess that was before the war, right? And I think your decision to move and the new community is before the war. So you said a bunch of things. You said something now that the aliyah from your own community is 20%, which is a relatively high number. I also read that you said that the aliyah of American Jewry, or maybe Orthodox Jewry, I'm not sure which one, but either one, it's not so great, is close to 0%. Right?
That is my understanding. It's
right.
Obviously, these are not my numbers. I haven't done the math, but I believe I've seen over the years published that the rate of aliyah from North America over the past 80 years is terribly low. I mean, you would think, because it seems like everybody's making aliyah today.
Right.
But when you look at the numbers, and there are reasons for that. If you look at the numbers of American Jews in general, it's quite a large number. But within our inner circles, it's obviously much larger than that.
Right.
It's not as large as many people would probably think.
Not as large at all.
Right. I find that it feels almost like on a qualitative level, it always feels like a loss for us when someone makes aliyah. I always almost feel like feels very bittersweet.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, just it's of course you're going to take your family make aliyah. Of course you would, and I'd rather not label people who make aliyah one way and people who don't another way. But I think it's fair to say that b'derech klal, the people who make aliyah are people who tend to be more, or even if not more, tend to be idealistic. People tend to be committed, aspirational, as I mentioned earlier. And those are people that you also, want to keep in your community because there are other objectives that we are trying to achieve other than, moving to Israel. So very often the people who make aliyah from my shul are the people who were filling some very, very important roles within the shul. So it feels always like, there's a vacuum, when people leave. But the truth of the matter is most are not yet making aliyah,
right.
as far as I can tell.
So you said something along the lines of, and this is my own language, that as rabbis and as a community, we should make it clear, or you should make it clear in America, that our future is in Israel, that aliyah is the goal. Again, those are my words. But on the other hand, you said that we shouldn't be judging people and, we have to respect everyone's position. So obviously, it's very, very difficult to make aliyah. Everyone has their own calculations. And of course, we should never judge anybody. But how do you really hold those two things together at the same time? Whereas the goal, the communal goal is to make aliyah, but yet, we don't want to necessarily ruffle any feathers.
Yeah. It's a very good question. For me, it's not so much ruffling feathers. I don't mind ruffling feathers. And I'm not giving you a hard time for using that expression, but, this is a very important, for me, this is just a style of preaching, if you will. I don't like using that word, but that's really what it is. I always want people to feel comfortable in shul, and even when I'm speaking about topics that they may find to be uncomfortable for them, to communicate it in a way in which they don't feel alienated, they don't feel shamed. They certainly should never feel as if anybody's looking at them. Certainly me, and that's true across the board. No matter what I'm speaking about, when I'm speaking about the malach of borer on Shabbos, or we're talking about making aliyah, to inspire people, to get people to think, and not to be uncomfortable with hearing ideas and thoughts, and to be motivated to perhaps consider things they haven't done before, but at the same time, not to feel less than if they're not signed on yet. So aliyah is, in some ways, I think it's a more challenging example because I do think, as my personal opinion, I do think that we, and when I say we, I don't mean only rabbis. We can speak rabbis from them. I think we should all be very clear, and we should be able to deliver a very clear and unapologetic message with a fair degree of confidence that the future of the Jewish people is in the land of Israel. And the reason why we should be able to say that with confidence is because Hashem has told us that, and He has spoken through the prophets that we read each and every Shabbos in shul, who in that bracha that we recite, we refer to them as the Nevi'ei Emes, who speak the words of truth. And so therefore, we shouldn't in any way whatsoever have a difficult time saying that with absolute confidence, with conviction, with belief. And this has nothing to do with anybody's decision to make aliyah. It's just we should be able to say that. Now, when you add to that the fact that we are seeing incredible trends, first of all, the growth of this country, the fact that, everything here just continues to grow and develop, and it's amazing. I've been here for a week, and just to see the cranes everywhere, it is amazing. Additionally, there have been some very, very concerning trends in the United States, in particular over the past several years. Maybe some will argue, well, this was in the making for decades now, perhaps, but we're definitely seeing it rear its ugly head. I am not a prophet, and I will not say, what's going to be 2, 5, 10 years from now. But you don't have to be a prophet to say all of this means something. Okay, now, so what do we do about that? Well, so now it becomes a question of, how do we get from where we are to where we want to get? So here's where I think, and I don't know that everybody agrees with me, we should similarly be able to say with conviction that it is important for the Jewish community to plan to move to Israel. Notice how I use my words. The Jewish community.
You're going slowly.
The Jewish community.
The Orthodox community or the Jewish community?
The Jewish community. Well, we're all Jews. Now, a community is made up of families made up of individuals. And the closer you get to speaking about individual families and individuals, it becomes more complicated because, and I appreciate the fact that you said this, it is very difficult to make aliyah. I am very excited. I am equally terrified about a lot of things that, I don't think anybody here wants to hear about. But it's a very big decision. It's a very difficult decision. And I understand that there are a lot of people who actually want it more than me. I know that for a fact. I mean, there are people who, I'm just looking at people who say, oh, I'm so jealous. I mean, people who I know because of conversations I've had with them for years who, for various reasons.
Rabbis or anybody?
More individuals,
Right.
I'm sure it applies to rabbis as well, but I'm just thinking about people in my shul who've shared with me how, despite their efforts over the years, their dreams have been put on hold, or in some cases sort of shattered indefinitely again and again. And it's for them, it's very, very painful, very, very painful. I can't claim that I feel that I've ever felt that same degree of loss, or that I would right now. So I'm blessed to have, at the very least, made this choice, and so I try to be mindful of that. And, when I speak publicly about the importance of making aliyah, the way I look at it is I do believe history will judge us the way we look and we study, the story of Ezra. We look and we very comfortably, we say, what were they thinking? I do believe that history will judge us similarly, but that doesn't necessarily mean that history is going to judge you, and they're going to judge me, and they're going to judge a person sitting next to you. And it sounds like a very difficult needle to thread, and it is, but I try my best.
So you said you were terrified about a bunch of things and that you didn't think anyone was interested. So just tell us, what's the number one thing that you're terrified about?
Okay.
It's all right. You
how
don't have to
vulnerable?
answer the
How vulnerable am I supposed to make myself in this? I mean, I would say that there are several things, and they all sort of relate one to another. And I'm in no particular order, truly, because it really does depend on the day. I feel that I live a very fulfilling, meaningful life right now, and that is mostly because I've been blessed with opportunities to teach and to lead. To interact with people in a way that virtually every day I feel that I'm leading a meaningful life. And I can't say that God is pleased with my work, but I certainly feel that we have been offered the opportunity, my wife and I, to live a life in which we feel that we are, that we are living a life which is more of a calling. I cannot be sure that when we cross the ocean, we will come here, it will be quite as natural, it'll be quite as easy, for lack of a better word. Not to say that the work is easy, but I don't wake up every morning and say, where do I belong now? Right. Who am I speaking with? Who am I meeting with? And to start all over again, not knowing quite how things will settle, is a very heavy feeling. Related to that is parnasa, just to be completely honest with you. I mean, right now I have several full-time jobs, and it's never enough, but it is enough.
Right.
And I know and I appreciate and I believe it with every fiber of my being that this is part of living in the land of Israel, and I'm trying very much to work on my bitachon just as an individual. But I am a risk-averse person. I don't generally do risky things. So there's nothing about this that makes sense for me based on the way I make decisions in general. And finally, just the family that we are leaving behind. I mentioned before we're following a lot of our family, but we're also my parents, my wife's parents. We have siblings that are here and there, and so this is. But I'm hopeful and confident that. But still, I mean, I don't know how many people who make aliyah are not somewhat concerned and worried. So maybe terrified is a strong word, but there are days that I'm truly, overwhelmed with, oh my gosh, are we really doing this?
Just about the Parnas a bit. So I said before that we have these rabbis in Barkai that we train. There are 200 rabbis and rabbaniot that we've trained over the years, over almost 15 years. And not one of them is their rabbi job their only job. So will you be having another job, or is this a full-time gig?
I thought you were just about to offer me a job. I literally thought that's where you're going with this. I'm hoping to continue to do some of the work that I do for RIETS. I hope it's okay for me to say it here, but I believe that I will. And the question is how much and what that will look like. Like I said, and that's another very, very important part of my professional profile, and that's another big part of my life that I will miss. But I'm hoping to be able to take some of that with me. And I mentioned before that I'm a therapist, and I hope to continue to be able to function in that space, and again to try to maximize communal impact, because that has really been meaningful to me. So I do think that there are several avenues, and it wouldn't be in any way whatsoever an ace for me to be able to put a plan together, which I'm trying to do right now as we speak. But still, it is a hard reset on the whole system.
You mentioned the therapy, so I want to talk to you about a little bit about that and about rabbinic training, because we have a lot in common, and that's fun. You train American rabbis, and I'm training Israeli rabbis. So what I want to ask you is that we spend so much time, my colleague Rav Sobel and I in Barkai, trying to take from America what can be transferred into Israel. Do you have you seen anything that you think is being done better here that could be brought over back to YU in America?
So I'm going to give you an answer that you may not like to hear, but I'll qualify. The answer is no, I haven't. But maybe that's only because I really haven't spent all that much time seeing what's going on here. I mean, I have like anybody else, and I've actually had the opportunity over the past number of years to interact with many Israeli rabbis here and there. But I don't know enough. I'm not so familiar with the system here to be able to say, this is something that we can and really should do there. I'm sure there are, best practices that can be shared, but most of the training that I do is really about, the full service, if you will, that the rabbi can offer above and beyond just being able to deliver drasha and give psak halacha, which is very, very little of the training that we do. To be clear, as far as the smicha in YU is concerned, that's a big chunk of it. But the rabbinical training program, which is really about pastoral counseling and crisis management and public speaking, but not so much the content piece of it as much as the technique, and being able to really talk about contemporary issues and develop a more sophisticated lens to be understand and appreciate the complexities of the challenges that people deal with. That people should become literate in issues of mental health, so that at the very least the rabbi should know the difference between, you'll forgive me, depression and anxiety, which a lot of people use like they're synonymous terms, which they're not. How to help a family that's in crisis. So these types of issues, basically almost everything that you won't find Sif and Shulchan Aruch that will direct you. So this is something that we do very, very well at RIETS. I'm very proud of it, and it's for that reason. Like I said, I'd like to continue to be part of that on some level. I'm sure there is what to share from here, but I haven't seen it yet, and I hope to be enlightened as I spend more time here and to say, hey, this is great.
Okay, I know you have to get to a wedding, so I want to ask you two last questions. Back to the aliyah, right? So I go to communities to speak in America a few times a year, and I know this from other people that travel from Israel, like this is a topic that we're not allowed to discuss, when we're in American communities, for fear of being judged, and we're elitist, and you should all just come to Israel. So a lot of my friends here, like I told you before, are in the judging game, right? And I really try not to judge them, but I also try not to judge the people that they're judging, right? Because it's very easy to just say, oh yeah, all American rabbis should just get up on their pulpits and say everyone should come to Israel. And it's very easy to judge people with what's going on in Israel, in America now, and say, why are they staying there? So having said that, I try not to judge. I will just say that personally, I came here kicking and screaming. I was the last person literally on the earth that wanted to come to Israel. I actively did not want to come to Israel. I wanted to build, a community in Middle America, and that's what I did in Milwaukee and in Kansas City. And I came here almost by accident. And 18 years later, I would tell you that it is by far the best thing that ever happened to me, and there's not a close second, right? Obviously, except for my kids and my wife, whatever, getting married and all that. So what this country has done for me and my family and my kids especially is just incomparable. It cannot be attained. So it's not a matter of judging, but when we see, number one, what we're getting, and that American Jews may not really understand it because they're not here, and we see what's going on in America, like some people do say, like, what why are they staying there? Like, right. I mean, it's not that they're judging; they just don't get it, right? So what are we missing?
Yeah, well, they are judging, so and that's okay. I think there are two issues over here. One is, forming judgments and maybe even speaking about it together with the members of your family or discussing it at the Shabbos table in Modi'in, which is arguably harmless and maybe even productive. What I find to be more problematic, and probably with the pushback that you may be hearing, I don't think it's fair if anybody say don't judge me. I mean, the Torah says, "B'tzedek tishpat ha'misecha," that we should try to judge people favorably. But you want to judge me the way you want to judge me, that's on you. But the problem is, and I have never heard this from you, and I actually haven't heard...
A lot of what I'm saying, I'm just playing devil's advocate.
No, but it's okay.
Because it's happening. People are talking about it quietly, but people are afraid to talk about it publicly.
Yeah.
And that's why your perspective is so important. That's why I want to hear it.
No, I appreciate it. But I think the problem is I'll call the shaming. And maybe some feel that's not a responsible word, but I really think that's what it is. Especially when it comes from people who themselves have made aliyah. Because... and I, in no way whatsoever do I want to suggest, first of all, I mean, it's wonderful to hear that the last 18 years of your life have been so meaningful and so wonderful. If I wanted to play devil's advocate, and this is almost a side point, but I would say, and I hope this makes you feel good because it's intended to be, but who knows about what that community in Milwaukee perhaps could have looked like. And that's where this is complicated, especially, in my opinion, for a rabbi, but not only. No, you don't have to comment on that. In others, because we don't have to resolve that. But in other words, it's more complicated than you've had a great life and so therefore you made the right decision. When people who have made aliyah said, I don't understand how people could still stay there. After all, this is going on and that's going on, and how many more signs do you need and what do you need? It's not, here's my point. I don't find that to be productive language. It doesn't motivate anyone. The therapist in me right now will say that what it does is it just triggers people's natural defense systems to be, on high alert. And any prospect for meaningful conversation has just come to a screeching halt.
That's what I try and say too. I say, even if you're right, which I'm not saying that you are, where are you going with this? What's it gonna prove?
And not only that, I will say, and I could be wrong, I've never done any studies here, but the reason why most American Jews live in America and most Israeli Jews live in Israel is
because they were born here.
Because they were born there, or because they were brought there when they were little kids. I mean, so I think we all have to. There has to be a certain amount of humility that we all take this. I mentioned before, I've always lived within 25 miles of the same place. That's human nature. People don't move, certainly to another country. I spent 2 hours this morning in the Nismat Panim. I had an escort with me, and things went as well as they could. But
that's never a good experience.
Yeah, but in other words, and there was nothing. There was nothing. I mean, somebody made this joke that should be the Yisurin, which I'm not complaining, but I'm just saying it's very, very difficult and it's very complicated. And the fact of the matter is, most people live here. It's a choice that was made for them, not by them. And perhaps even in your case, not to say that you were literally forced, but it sounds like on a certain level you were. Now, there are those people who have made a very, very courageous decision to make aliyah. There are also people who've made a decision to make aliyah and have regretted it. And I don't know how large that number is, and I suspect it's not such a large number. But to pretend that those people don't exist also does great disservice to this conversation. So I want to be very clear. I'm a proponent of aliyah, and I think it's important that we continue to promote that very clearly and very unapologetically and with pride and confidence, regardless of where we are. I mean, I've been speaking about it for 25 years in the pulpit, long before I made a decision to go. And I always would say, not if, when, and nobody should aspire to retire to Florida. Nothing against Deerfield Beach or Boynton Beach. Like, in others, it should always be part of our thinking. Okay, but at the end of the day, like when I see these conversations, most of them, online, when people are, saying, I don't get these people, these Jews in Teaneck, what are they thinking? How many more signs do they need? Now they elected this new, mayor in New York City. It's not a productive conversation. Right. Even if there's some basis to the argument, it's not. No one. And I will say something else. I don't know. Maybe you can tell me otherwise. I have not yet met one person who has made aliyah in my lifetime because they were afraid of anti-Semitism in New York. I live in Teaneck, which has been, the center of international news over the past couple of years. People are concerned about it. People are not dismissing it. I can remember it was only a few years ago when you could actually walk into my shul, in broad daylight and just open the door.
You're talking about from America.
In America. Those days are long over.
Right.
Now you can't do it. But people who are making aliyah are still doing it for the same reasons they always did. In my lifetime. Right. And that is because they are aspiring towards something great. Now some may actually be making plans. Some people are a little nervous, and so therefore they're starting a conversation with Nefesh B'Nefesh, but they're actually going to go ahead and pull that lever and say we're doing it because we're afraid of living in Teaneck in New York City. I haven't seen it yet. I hope never to see that day, because if we do, it means that things, God forbid, have gotten really, really bad. I think we should. I think if anybody here is listening to this who is part of the Hasbara, the invitation to Israel should be much more. It should be positive, and it should be an invitation of love and with true understanding that it's really, really, really hard to go ahead and do this. And even to say, I promise you, you'll find a job. I'll take care of you. You'll see. Right. What does that really mean, right? It's like, even that, I have to say, I know some of the people saying this, they say they mean it, and it feels real and it feels genuine, but really? Like, are you, and what if I don't get a job? Like, what exactly are you promising me?
The RCA, the Rabbinical Council of America, started this program. There are 4 aliyah mentors in Israel that are supposed to be helping just with guidance and questions and answers. So I happen to be one of them. And when our colleagues, or at least some of them, many of them, call and speak to me about making aliyah, I'm actually a lot of times tell them that you better sit down and really think about what you're doing, because it's very difficult for an American pulpit rabbi, to make aliyah. It's very our job doesn't really exist here. Yeah. That's probably the topic of another podcast. But you're right. Anyone who makes it seem like, oh, it's so simple, it may be easier today than it was 25, 30 years ago, but it's still a very, very difficult thing to do in so many ways. So I want to end where we started, and that's about the the Anglo shul and the shul in Israel. So as your community, with all due respect, is not going to be the first Anglo shul in America, in Israel, right? Meaning there's in Modi'in.
Are you serious?
I belong to one in Modi'in, and there are ones in Ra'anana and others in Beit Shemesh, and
I was talking to a rabbi the other day who mentioned that in Israel we have the 5 towns.
Right.
He said Ra'anana, Beit Shemesh, Yerushalayim.
Right. Around eight neighborhoods in Yerushalayim, right? Yeah. But in all of those instances, even though the attempt was made, right, to make an Anglo shul, in some ways, and in other places, a lot of ways, it just didn't really happen to the extent that it was equal to what it was in America, or even close, right? And I would suggest that the shul in Israel it's not as necessary as it is despite how important I think it is. I spent all day preparing rabbis to be rabbis in shuls. It may not be as central in Israel as it is in America for so many different reasons, right? Meaning in America, if you want to identify with the Jewish community, you know that you have to go to the shul, right? Meaning I used to, in those 2 communities where I was, in Milwaukee and in Kansas City, right? I had Israelis, secular Israelis, come to my shul on Shabbat, right? And it was the first time that they were ever in a synagogue. They never entered into a synagogue, but in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, or Kansas City, they knew that in order to identify and associate with the Jewish community, that was done in a synagogue, right? People would argue, by the way, this is all a question of playing devil's advocate, because I don't really agree with what I'm saying, but I just want to hear with what you have to say. People would argue that in Israel, right, we have so many other ways of acting as Jews. We have the schools, and the kids have Bnei Akiva, and the street. It's the calendar, the Jewish calendar, the Hebrew language, right? You could go on a tiyul where you're walking in the ways of Avraham Avinu or Yoshua, right? Meaning I could go on and on and on and on, right? So I'm just asking, do you think it's as critical to have that model here as it is in Teaneck?
Yeah. So again, I'll end the way I started as well, and that is I don't live here yet.
Right.
So anything I say about what I think about what should be here is at the very least presumptuous, and maybe worse. Maybe I'm just completely sort of speaking out of turn. What do I know? Having said that, I would agree that the need for a Jewish center, as we would often call them in America, is not necessary here. The concern for assimilation, and even frankly the need for a shul to be a place where people could access services such as Chevra Kadisha, Bikur Cholim, whether it's about building and maintaining an eruv or building a mikvah. Many, if not all of these services, if you will are provided partially or entirely by government
Right, not
services.
Bikur Cholim.
I mean, okay,
right.
but I'm saying,
Right.
okay.
Yeah, the other things, yes. Right.
But even if that's true, I can only tell you, and I don't think that I'm unique. Most of my job as a rabbi is in dealing one-on-one or one-on-two or one-on-three with people. It's relationship work, and people today need a relationship not only to a rabbi and to a rebbitzin, but to one another. And people are struggling today in ways that maybe they always have, but maybe people dealt with it differently. We are finding many, many more people who are searching for meaning, people who are struggling with what, at the least, what manifests as what we sometimes call the mental disorder, whether or not there's a pathology or it's just because of some of the trends that have taken place, how social media, as an example, has impacted our lives. It has accelerated the need for human connection, and I believe that when the members of my shul come back 1, 2, 5, 10 years later and say, I think that's what they mean. They're not saying we miss a place where we know what time mincha is, on a Sunday. They're not talking about, it would be great if we had a shiur like this. Right. No, because they would find that. That's not what they're talking about. And they're certainly not saying, I wish I had a place that would keep me from assimilating. That's not it. What they mean is they wish they had a place that, remember Cheers from the 80s,
yes.
where everybody knows your name. And that's what they miss. And when I say I'm here to create, an quote unquote an Anglo community, I mean more than anything else, frankly, that is really what we mean. And maybe that terminology is somewhat offensive, and it's not intended to be. But really, there were other uses.
It's not insulting. It just raises questions.
Yeah, right. But there were other terms that we used to describe the community, and they were deliberate. They were not, it was. We came up with the description before AI was available, so we did this ourselves. We didn't use AI. Growth oriented and multi-generational. A certain vision of a community of people who would really be there to live with one another, to support one another, and I believe that that's a beautiful thing. Whether the world always needed it and whether that's what it was like in the shtetl, I don't know. But the world desperately needs it today. By the way, not only the Jewish world. Right. People, certainly in America, our faith-based communities are so much healthier relative to the general population. People need to come together. They need to come to shul. They need to go to church. People really, really need that type of communal structure. And that's what I think we have to offer. And I hope that there'll be more communities like that.
Right. Well, I think that is so critical. And when it comes down to it, then what we're doing at Barkai and what you're talking about and doing with, Talmidim and RIETS and what you'll be doing here and what our rabbis are doing here is really the same thing.
Yeah, I agree.
Right? It's just about the relationship.
I agree.
And you talked about being vulnerable before. I guess I'll end with me being vulnerable. And that is that I think that what I'm doing in Barkai is very, very meaningful. I hope that we're making a contribution to, Israeli life. And like I said, these years have been wonderful for me. There's a certain passion and excitement that I have living here that I never experienced before. Not living here. But I do miss the what you're talking about. I miss it a lot. And even though I'm very excited about everything I do every day, I miss the relationships working as a rabbi one-on-one or one-on-two, like you said, with because I'm not, a pulpit rabbi right now. So the fact that you've built or you've been able to build, this model where you're going to be able to do all these things that you love and that you're so good at, right? And do it here in Eretz Yisrael and Medinat Yisrael is really a bracha, not only for you and your family, but for all of us and really for the Jewish people. So I want to wish you much hatzlacha.
Thank you.
The community should grow, Hebrew, English, Spanish, Italian, whatever it may be, right? It should be what the people who are living there need it to be, right?
Amen.
And you should be able to continue being a ro'et zon and the person who, is able to form these relationships that people are looking for so much. So I really thank you.
Thank you.
I said before that I didn't have people on from outside of Israel. And that's because I really wanted, when I started this podcast, to showcase people who I thought were heroes, but not like heroes like loud in the headlines, but people who were doing important things that I wanted people on the other side of the ocean to know about. So I certainly think that you are a hero. Okay. I do. You're sitting here making. Okay. I don't use those words lightly. You're sitting here making it so matter of factly that this is what you're going to do. This is a big, big, big step for you. It's a big step for your family. You're not, you're not 30 years old, and there are a lot of ifs here, right? So that it is a risk to some degree. So for that, I respect you. I'm sure our listeners will do as well.
Okay.
You should have hatzlacha rabbah.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Rabbi Fine, for this opportunity, for all the incredible work that you do for the community. And yes, I myself have realized for several years now that so much of what you're doing at Barkai is similar to what we do at RIETS, or vice versa. And for sure, I mean, it's amazing to see the impact that you have had. I can only imagine. I actually can't. But like going back to what I said before, because I'm not here, but the number of rabbis that you have reached, which, by the way, of course, means that your reach is well into the tens of thousands of individuals who have been enriched because of your incredible service to the community is amazing.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And look forward to future conversations.
Okay, hatzlacha rabbah. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining me on Defining Moments. Remember to subscribe to the podcast on Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else you get your podcasts, and leave a 5-star rating and a review. Please share this podcast with your friends who, like you, want to be inspired both by this period in Jewish and Israeli history and by the people who are making these defining moments happen. Let's not squander this unique opportunity. Maybe the next defining moment will be created by you or me. Until next time, I'm Rabbi David Fine.